And then we will go into really how to help your children, grandchildren, guardians, the students with personal budgeting and really being able to be more disciplined about how they how they go about their finances. And so we will start with the first slide. In between the slides, we will have our fact and fiction. These are just some trivial questions that we'll throw out there, give you a couple of seconds to kind of think about, think of the answers. So 80% of students today shoulder some or all of college costs. This was a CNBC report that came out in 2012. If 4 or 5 students, the same report says 4 or 5 students are now working while going to school, putting an average of 19 hours a week while classes are in session. Let's put this in perspective very quickly. What this means in today's world, in today's realities, is that most of the students out there are partly or mostly responsible for financing their own education. Some of them are obviously doing this at the detriment of their education. I know there are a couple of studies out there, I don't have the slides here today, that also speak to the dropout rates, students not being able to cope with just the stress of working so many hours during the week and still having to keep up with their classes. So these are definitely very challenging times. It goes without saying. We're moving to the next slide. 37% of college costs were paid by students in 2010. In 2013, that dropped to 27%. Okay, this was a study, a 2013 study conducted by Sally May. Again, let's take a quick look at what this really means. Clearly, parents are finding it more difficult to support their parents, guardians, and whoever else is supporting students are finding it more difficult to be financially capable of supporting their wards. And so obviously it has to shift somewhere. So obviously it shifts back to the students. So the students are bearing more of the cost of financing their own college education. 35% of college students surveyed live with their parents. 32% of college students surveyed live on campus. 18% of college students surveyed live off campus with friends and classmates. 4% of college students surveyed live off campus by themselves. This was a YouGov study by the Pew Research Center. Again, what does this translate to? We're talking about, how as a parent or as a grandparent, as a guardian, as somebody who, who's looking to support a student in college, you're looking to present, a situation where the idea of giving them precise figures, talking with them on the realities that exist, how to properly budget, what are they going to be responsible for paying, what are you prepared to be responsible to support areas to support them in. So clearly, the way to communicate support to the students is to be truthful, is to provide these kinds of data, which are really hard data, and these are all data that can be, we can get from the different studies that are out there. But I guess the reality is that you cannot put your head in the sand and pretend that what we're going through in the U.S. is not, is not what it is. There is obviously high unemployment, and that's probably been part of what's been causing a lot of the shift in, the burden that's being placed on the students, having to be more responsible for, their own education. But so the idea is to really have a sit down and a look at personal situations. Every family is going to be different. Parents today are also struggling with, debt and so many other things that they, that inhibits their ability to, to be able to do more for their students. And so it's important that when we approach, when you want to approach having these conversations, you have to, the students are going to talk to each other. Okay, so we know that for sure. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to share ideas. They're going to be looking for ways to make it easier on themselves as well. So being truthful, providing, real data, looking at personal situations, talking in concrete terms about what areas you can support them in. Is it tuition? Is it books? Is it boarding? Is it room? Are they going to live off campus? Can they afford, would they have to stay at home? These are all considerations that are extremely important. And so, it's all about trying to balance that family situation with, being able to support them fully. We're moving into sort of the area that I feel is really important when it comes to, we know what's going on in the country. We know, sort of what the difficulties are. Now it comes back to how do you help your ward to be more disciplined when it comes to budgeting? Because this is all about budgeting now. It's all about, maximizing what you have. So the first thing you want to definitely let them know, the first 4 things you need to let them know is, a budget is about achieving certain set out goals. All right, it's about using the money that they do have more efficiently. It's about becoming financially secure. One of the rules that young people need to be aware of is that expenses, should never be more than income. It's easier said than done. There's so much credit out there today. Even parents sometimes are overburdened with debt, and so they understand that the more debt you take on, the less likelihood that you'll be able to be financially secure. So these are some of the things that are very important for you to speak to when you're addressing these specific areas. You want the goals that are set out to be specific. There should be obviously specific dollar amounts involved. You should have dates, set out dates by which time you expect that, if you're if you have a budget, whether it's a short term, medium term, or long term, there should be a time frame around these, and there should be dollar amounts that are that are specific to those. We shall come up. The next slide, I believe, will have a chart to sort of give you a breakdown of what that looks like. The goals have to be measurable. It should be reasonable and realistic. Lots of times, people will tell you, this is my goal for next year, or this is what I expect I'll be doing. But there are no concrete steps to create anything to help achieve that, and so it becomes just something they said or something they almost like a dream. So what you want to make sure that you do with a budget is make it reasonable, make it realistic, something that they can definitely achieve, that they can definitely conquer. That would be motivating to them. So an example of a short-term goal could be having an emergency savings account. This is simply an account that they put money into regularly. Whatever is comfortable for the student, whether it's monthly, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, whatever, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that it's consistent. Now, if they need to decide on how much they expect to see or expect to have saved in this account by a certain time period. As an example, let's say they decided they wanted to save up for a year, and they were making monthly deposits of $83. All right, that would come to about $1,000 at the end of that year. And so again, there's a time frame, there's a concrete dollar amount, and there is a goal. The goal is to have an emergency savings account. All right, so these are the kind of things we're talking about. That when you're having these conversations, you have to ask them to have concrete, come up with concrete plans to make it work. Our first fact or fiction: is 3 to 6 months of living expenses advisable for a solid emergency account? Think about that for just a moment. Is 3 to 6 months of living expenses advisable for a solid emergency account? And that would be fact. 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses is usually what's advisable for you to have in a emergency account. The account should also be a liquid account. And what do I mean by liquid? Liquid simply means you have the ability to get access to the money without having to either pay any fines, pay any fees, and so you have immediate access to when you need it. That's why it's called an emergency fund. It will be something may come up that you did not expect, but you need to be able to have access to that money without having to go through a whole lot of work. All right, we're moving on. Should you consider saving, even if you have debt? Absolutely. One of the key things to talk about when you're having this conversation with your ward is, they may have a credit card, they may have, some other debt that, cell phone bills, any kind of debt at all. And sometimes we tend to think that because we have debt, we should not consider saving. But the reality is that no matter what your situation is, no matter how much money you're bringing in, you need to always have a savings plan. No matter how much, again, I talked about that, no matter how much money you're putting away, it's important that you're putting away something and it's consistent and it builds the habit that you need. Sometimes people talk about wanting to delay savings because they feel like it's not important right now. There are more immediate things. And so what happens is you put it off, but then you end up not coming back to it, and it ends up being something you never come back to. So the important thing is to start it and stick with it. We have another fact or fiction. Is a checking account the best account to use for an emergency fund? Just think about that again. What you're trying to achieve with the emergency fund, this is money that you may not need, in short term. So is a checking account the best account to use for an emergency fund? The answer is, it's a fiction. It's not true. Savings accounts and money market accounts are usually the best types of accounts to use when you're talking about saving for emergencies. These accounts are, most of the time, they are interest-bearing accounts. And so while you're not using the money, you're earning some interest on the money. So it ensures that the money is not just sitting in an account, not being able to grow. And so it's important that when you're having these conversations with your ward, again, they shouldn't think that just because they have a checking account that is their emergency fund. They should always consider having a savings or money market account. And again, it's liquid, and they get access to it. We're going to talk about a credit card example. Your ward may have a credit card. They have heard about a credit card. A credit card has been marketed to them at some point. They're thinking about establishing credit. Let me give you an example really quickly of something you need to talk to them about when a credit card discussion arises. Assuming they have a $2,000 balance on their credit card, typically a new borrower, which a student is likely to be, would attract a higher rate of interest. The reason is because they are considered more higher risk. They have no previous history of using credit, and so most financial institutions and most credit card companies would always apply a greater interest to their credit card accounts. So an example in this case is, student has a 19.8% interest annual percentage rate on the credit card. They're making minimum payments of 2.5, which is usually what the minimum payment would be on a credit card. And then sometimes they'll give you a minimum, and then you can pay that as well. But an example of this situation would be if your child was making just the minimum payment on the $2,000 card, that the card with a $2,000 balance with an interest rate of 19.8, it would take them, and they were making only the minimum payment on this card, it would take them 14.5 years to repay the card, the $2,000 balance, right? And the total cost of interest would be $2,848. So again, what are we saying? It's important that when you're having these conversations, you're using hard numbers. You're providing, clear detail as to what to expect. We're talking about, being disciplined. Making a minimum payment will get you through each month where you're not late on your payment. But it's important not to make that a habit. It's good to have the flexibility with the credit card, where some months you may have to make the minimum payment if there are other things that come up that require you to address it with income. However, always always stress that it's best if they try to pay a lot more on the balance than just the minimum. Again, we come to a fact or fiction. And it is every credit card company charges an annual fee. You may ask, what is an annual fee? Well, most times, credit card companies, banks, beyond just giving a credit card to an individual, will also require an annual fee, and it will have an anniversary date. So the date that you get the card, every year after that, on that same date, you're charged an annual fee. I mean, the fee rate is different from institution to institution. You will see some with $35, some $50, and so forth. Now, with a young person who's applying for a credit card, there is a greater likelihood that there will be an annual fee, only because they feel like your choices are limited. You have no credit history. You're looking to establish credit, and so they know that if somebody is willing to give you a credit card, you're likely to grab it, and so they'll just go ahead and slide that fee in there, because they feel like you're not going to resist. So that's the annual fee, and the answer is fiction. Not all credit card companies charge an annual fee. As a matter of fact, Apple Federal Credit Union, we don't charge any fee on any of our credit cards. So again, your ward's son, grandson, after having a conversation about thinking about establishing an account and start saving, they may push back and say, well, do I really need to just start that now? Can I wait? I don't really have much money to put away. But it's important that you stress that starting now is key. They need to develop the habit. They need to have that discipline. If they're going to be partly responsible or even mostly responsible for helping to fund their college education, they need to have an understanding of what it takes to budget, what it takes to stay within a budget. You can use the examples that you go through as a guardian, as a parent. You have a budget that you follow. You have income. You have expenses. Let them know. Even in the household, everyone has income and expenses. You have to stay within a certain parameter in order not to be over your head. People who have difficulty with finances is usually because they're not they're not disciplined enough to stay within working on looking at how much is coming in and how much is going out, how much am I putting away. Those are things that are important. And let them see themselves as an essential expense. That means, it's not just about the other things out there, but let them look at themselves as important and say, I'm going to put away X amount of dollars, in an account just for me. All right. Now, somebody who's just starting off, who's establishing an account, doesn't have that much money, has one account, has a debit card, so they have immediate access to their accounts. There are a couple of things they need to put in place to help them keep track of what's going on with their money, because it's very easy, as you probably all well know, for us to have money in our accounts one day and the next day you're wondering what happened to it. All right. So one of the things that they want to do certainly is most banks today, if not all, offer online banking. Most young people have mobile phones, smartphones all the time on them. Most financial institutions also have mobile apps. So you can have immediate access to your account. They want to be able to keep an eye out on what's going on in their accounts. Make sure that they're monitoring their ATM use. Sometimes it's easy for us to bounce back and forth between the ATM machines, and before you know it, you've withdrawn so much money and you didn't realize it because it's right there. There are money management or for personal money management softwares out there. One of them is Quicken. Quicken can work with multiple financial institutions. So if you have accounts at different financial institutions, you can use that software to sort of keep everything in one format on one spreadsheet. So you can kind of see what's going on with your finances, how much is going out, how much is coming in, and that way it helps you track, your expenses. Because again, budgeting is all about income and expenses. What's coming in, what's going out, and being able to know that and being able to be on top of it is key. They can use different. There's some other software out there. FinanceWorks is another one that kind of helps them. Again, you can have many financial institutions out there, including Apple. We offer these types of software to assist with just managing your daily transactions, being able to know what's left, what's going where, what's coming in, and you can create spreadsheets on your own. But since there are these automated software out there, there's no need for you to have to worry about doing that. The other issue to discuss is income. The jobs that they're doing. What kind of jobs are they doing? How are they getting paid? Do they have potential to get overtime? Do they get bonuses? Do their incomes fluctuate? Is it commission? Is it seasonal? If it's income that if your son, daughter is getting a bonus, they should not include it as part of their income. This should be money that, since it's not budgeted for, they should, it should be one of those that they consider putting in the emergency account. because as I said, they need to if they budgeted if their budget and they're sticking to their budgets, they do not need to use money that comes in that is more or less just over the top for anything. They should be looking to put that money away to help with future expenses. And that's just a way to have a conversation around money that they receive. It doesn't, as long as they are getting money that they have not planned for, that kind of money should be put away and used for more important issues later. With expenses, you want to talk about current and proposed. Current just means expenses that are going to be recurring. So, whether it's weekly, whether it's biweekly, whether it's monthly, there are bills that they might be responsible for paying. And these are the ones that they need to identify. And so, you have fixed expenses that the amounts don't change, whether it's rent. Rent doesn't change except, at the end of the year when the landlord might decide to do something with that. But other than that, if they're paying on a car loan, for example, that will remain fixed until the loan is paid off. So there are certain bills that will be fixed. With those fixed, those are easier to manage because how much is going out, based on whether it's monthly or weekly. Then you have the others that are variable. So these could be, issues that deal with maybe credit card balances. Of course, if you're putting debt on a credit card, those are, depending on how much you're putting on the credit card, it may determine how much you have to pay. Even if you're going to decide to pay the minimum, again, it'll change based on the balance. Of course, utility bills, such as cell phone bills, those will also fluctuate from time to time. And so these are expenses, and when they create their expense sheet, they should differentiate between what's fixed and what's variable. And basically, they have to determine what's essential and what's discretionary. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But explain to them that not all their expenses is going to be essential. We have desires, we have wants. I was reading an article not too long ago that was talking about why do we buy some things we don't need? As people, we buy things that we don't actually need, and there's reasons for that. But they need to understand that in an environment where budgeting is extremely important, where income is limited, especially as a student, they need to be careful with making sure that if they don't need something, they shouldn't be spending money on it, because this is money that's going to, is wasted. And so they should always ensure that they are careful with those items that they need versus the ones that are just wants and are discretionary. Increasing income, they may wonder, well, how can I make more money, even as a part-time employee? Again, we talked a little bit about that. There's the opportunity for overtime. Of course, they have to talk to their employers, the managers, supervisors, et cetera, and see if they can, get some overtime hours, to help them increase their income. They may have to look for something different, depending on how many hours they're able to put in. And those are the kind of things they need to consider. They need to consider decreasing their spending. This is very hard to do, especially if you maintain a certain lifestyle, or you're the kind of person, if they're the kind of person, obviously your daughter or son, if they're the kind of person that likes to be a copycat, or you want to follow others, and you're easily influenced by what others are doing, then of course decreasing spending may be a little bit difficult, but nevertheless it needs to be discussed. Again, they need to look at things that they may not need to be spending money on, areas that they can renegotiate. You can, maybe they have a cell phone plan that the number of minutes they have on it. They don't use all the minutes and things like that. They need to go back and look at those things diligently. Maybe they are living in a sharing an apartment where they might be able to add an extra roommate. These are outside the box ideas, and these are things I'm sure that you've all thought about. But again, these are things that need to be discussed and need to be worked out and implemented. But they need to see and understand that budgeting is serious. It's not something we just throw up in the air and wish it comes true or wish it happens. They actually have to implement whatever is decided. Budget busters are situations where again if you create a budget and you are adding more debt outside of what your income is because you have a credit card that has a pretty decent balance or decent limit, and you're able to just go ahead and swipe and swipe and swipe, obviously it will create a debt that you will have to repay. So they need to understand that budgets are, they can only work when you maintain a certain level of discipline, especially with your debt, because the more debt you acquire, the more you're going to have to pay out, whether it's monthly, etc., and which will obviously reduce your disposable income and even the monies that you can put away to save. They need to shop around. It's not first financial institution that offers you a card, you're going to jump at it. You need to bide your time, spend time doing some research, give yourself some options, and be able to find the ones that will be most beneficial to you. And that's one of the things that you have to talk to them about as well. There are options out there, the numerous financial institutions out there, and so anytime we're looking for credit, it's important to be patient and to really do your due diligence and make sure that you're getting the best deal. Because at the end of the day, it's money you're going to have to pay back. So the more careful you are in your due diligence, the better off in the long term. Okay, we've come to another fact or fiction. This one says, you get good credit rating by paying bills on time. Is that a fact or is that fiction? It's a fact. Under the FICO model, 35% of your FICO score is based on repayment history. This is making it the single biggest factor in determining your score. They may have a lot of questions about credit. What does it mean to have credit? What is a credit score? What is a credit file? And those kinds of questions. But this is a way to start to break them in and to let them know, having a credit card is great, but what's even greater is being able to maintain good credit score, being able to maintain a good credit profile. Because at the end of the day, you can have the credit card, you can have the car, but if you're not making your payments on time, and you're late, and you're getting late fees, you're getting accounts are not being paid, they're going into collection, and those types of things. This will eventually harm their credit, and so the better your credit score, the cheaper you're able to get credit in the U.S. So you need to start explaining to them right from now the importance of keeping a good credit profile. So it's not just establishing credit, but making sure that you don't take on too much debt, so they're not overburdened, and that they have the ability to make the payments that are required when due. Okay, we have another fact or fiction. Are you more financially responsible if you only finance large purchases such as a house or a car? Are you more financially responsible if you only finance large purchases such as a house or a car? and that is a fact. Preferably the only types of purchases that should be financed are large ones. And what that really speaks to is, discipline. Again, having credit is good. Using credit wisely is even more important. There's research out there that shows that there are lots of people who now use credit as a part of their income. Right, so you get your monthly salary, you get your monthly pay, whether it's bi-weekly, however it comes in. But then the credit you've been able to obtain is now part of what you're using as your regular, recurring expense, which is really dangerous, because what happens is you're paying interest on the money you're using. And so ideally, when you're looking to use credit that you're going to be paying interest on, it should be on things that are so large you can't save up for. And we all know what those are. But discourage them from using credit to make small purchase items, things that they should be saving for and putting money away for. They're just putting on that credit card or putting on that line of credit. And so that's pretty much what that means. Another area is budget busters with regards to spending. We've kind of touched on that a little bit as well. The purchasing decision process. You're in a store, you're looking at an item. You need to ask yourself some questions. Do I need the item? Right? Do I need it right now? This is what goes on in your mind when you're thinking about, doing a purchase. What would happen to me if I didn't get it? These are the kind of things that they'll be thinking about. But again, as a guardian, as a parent, it's important that we help guide them and help them understand, again, the importance, the things that are necessary, that are essential, and things that are discretionary. Again, so when they ask themselves these questions as to whether or not it's important, whether or not it's necessary, this should be, whatever answer they come up with should determine whether or not they should be buying it, right? So again, it's one of those things that is important for them to understand when it comes to spending. Budgeting is not easy, especially when they're just getting started. They need to kind of, you need to help them kind of visualize where they're going. It's like you have a starting point, you have an ending point. Let them see what the ending point is going to look like. I think that's going to be helpful to any young person who's going to start thinking about budgeting, because they've got to paint a picture. You've got to help them paint that picture so they can kind of see where they're going with it. If they just think that, okay, I'm going to be budgeting and saving, but they can't really, almost like what's the value in it. You've got to sort of show them what the value is. And tell them, the importance of staying on organized, keeping track of what's going on. Again, we talked about being realistic, because if it's a non-realistic goal, they're not going to be motivated. They're probably not going to ever accomplish it, because even in their mind, they're thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. And you can help them. You can help them. You can help monitor their progress as well. And make sure that if they are reaching their goals, you guys are celebrating it together. Let them know that, hey, great job with that. I'm glad that you were able to save up this much this month, or over the last 3 months, et cetera, et cetera. Those are kind of important things that that you want to share with them. Obstacles to getting started. Of course, it's easy to say, I'm going to start tomorrow. If you have that conversation with your child. Let them know they need to think about starting it right now. Walk over to that, to that bank, walk over to wherever it is, and open that account and start putting money away. And of course, we all have the feeling that we don't have enough money to be able to start budgeting or even saving. Even parents have that feeling sometimes, like, well, do I make enough money to even think about doing this? And we all know the importance of it. We all know it's important, and we all know it's a mindset that we have to have. And sometimes goals are overwhelming. And that's what we said. Set up goals that are realistic and are achievable. Because if not, then it becomes a moot point. Fact or fiction? I think this should be the last one. Is food, clothing, education, and even rent considered essential expenses? Is food, clothing, education, and even rent considered essential expenses? It's a fact. These items are considered essential. On the other hand, we can say discretionary expenses could be things like vacations, electronics, going to the movies, and recreational expenses. We all know that it's important to have some downtime and relaxation time. However, those are not considered essential. Those are just considered, it's good for your health, it's good for your peace of mind, but it's not something we want to do at the expense of the essential expenses. Basically, that's what that means. And we have come to the end of our presentation tonight. We hope that you've been able to take some pointers away from the presentation. And again, my name is Emmanuel Obi with Apple Federal Credit Union here on the George Mason campus, Fairfax campus. We want you to feel free to come by the branch or get in touch with us if you feel you need to get a little bit more insight into some of the things we weren't able to talk about tonight. I'm going to turn it over to back to Rebecca.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for providing us with that great information. For those of you who joined us midway through the webinar, my name is Rebecca Currahan, and I'm the Graduate Assistant here at Family Programs and Services at Mason. Just a reminder that our next webinar will take place on May 6th at 7 p.m. and University Career Services will be providing information on career strategies for your student. Be sure to mark your calendars and join us in May. We will remain here for any last-minute questions, so if you have anything else that you would like to ask, please feel free to do so using the chat feature. I will be disabling the video function, so don't worry if we disappear. We will still be around for the next couple of minutes. Thanks for tuning in.